Hey, welcome again into Strategies for Living, the television version. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and Strategies for Living, well, we're all about helping us live healthier, happier, more peaceful lives in our bodies, minds, spirits, and relationships. And how do we do that? Well, we ask life strategists, like our life strategist today, and you're going to hit all four of them. Artie Cesario, body, mind, spirit, relationships. You leave nothing unturned, right?
Hopefully not, yeah.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Strategies for Living. You're a great life strategist. And I in the month of April, I'm having my favorite life strategist on. And so
Well, I'm honored.
Artie is the author of, well, when we first met, I almost choked on my salad because you were writing this book. You were writing It's All Good and God's at the End, and we're eating. It's the first time I ever met you, and we're eating, and I'm asking you about what you're writing about, and you told me the name of the book that It's All Good and God is at the End. And you began to tell me that it's about your mother-in-law dying. And I almost choked on my lettuce until you told me what Paul Harvey would say is the rest of the story. We'll talk about the rest of the story today. But before we do that, I want to tell you that Artie has a new book out. It's called We Throw Things at You, Dealing with Life's Zingers. Did you think, if I had run into you 10 years ago, would you have predicted that you've got two very good selling books right now?
Probably not.
Yeah, because you're an insurance guy.
I'm an insurance guy, yeah.
And how did you come about? How did writing come about for you, Artie?
You know, everything, I believe that the Lord just takes you to a place for a reason and a season. Like I told you, I never thought about, I've always written technical articles about insurance that nobody reads.
Right.
But,
because you write for people who, you're like a broker. You sell to people, you broker insurance.
Mostly commercial insurance,
yeah,
that's right.
You're not somebody that is in a storefront that people, I'm going to come in and buy insurance from you. You broker it.
Yeah, and like I said, I work with people that purchase commercial insurance. But like you were saying, the greatest moment of my life was watching my mother-in-law die.
And I almost choked on my salad. But then you went on to say, and it's a wonderful story, and it really is the heart and soul of your first book. It's All Good and God is at the End. Taught you a real lesson, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, she went into a state of ecstasy, and I've never experienced anything like that before.
Yeah.
And
you were witness to this.
I was a witness to her, and having this incredible experience. So I became so interested in the dying process, I became a hospice volunteer. And I learned so much about working with the dying. And I would write these little stories about what happened, and I would pass them around. And this one lady took me to lunch one day and said, "Man, I think you've got a book here."
Yeah.
And then my publicist, after I wrote the first book, said, "Well, you're a writer. Why don't you write some other stories, maybe not religiously based, not related to dying, because a lot of people don't like to hear about dying. It's
right.
not a topic that they feel too comfortable with."
Yeah, so you got to get another book out there that's not so heavy.
Right.
Although, when you tell people the topic, what happens when we die, you think it's a heavy book. Not a heavy book at all. It's a and the interesting thing is, since you've written the second book, first book selling like hotcakes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Go figure.
It's amazing. Well, and like I said, we're all going to die. I mean, it's not something you want to talk about, but any time that we can.
Why not? Why shouldn't we? Why? Why do we do what we do? Why does the funeral industry? What's the ultimate compliment that we can give a mortician? Oh, he looks so natural.
They look so good.
Well, wait a minute. What? He's not supposed to look natural. He's gone. Right. So I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox.
I've done life insurance, pretty much all my life and everything,
Yeah.
and no one likes to talk about life insurance either. But the dying process is, and I want to recommend a book. It's called The Loved One, if you can ever get it. It's an old movie about the dying process. Jonathan Winters is in it. It's very, very comical.
So it's a movie, not a book.
You know, it's
an
a
old
movie. It's a movie. It's an old book and an old movie.
The loved one.
The loved one. But I'm a little bit irreverent. You know, I take a little bit of reverence, and I don't like to be judgmental. And I love to listen to people, and then they tell me their stories. And to this day, when I'm around someone who's dying, I mean, they really, toward the end of their life, they hold back nothing. They tell you everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a real blessing to be there. But it's amazing. I was with someone not too long ago, and I realized that why did they wait to the end to live?
Yeah.
Why did they worry about, oh, what's going to happen? Why didn't they start enjoying their life now?
Where'd you get the title? It's all good and God is at the
Well,
end.
I do like an adult beverage, and I was down at the Hard Rock down in Biloxi, and I was talking to the bartender, and I was telling her I was writing this book, and I was groping for a name, and she said, well, like what you're telling me, like it's all good and like God's at the end.
So your bartender. Your bartender gave you the title for the book. You never
right.
know.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how I got the name for the other book is I remember as a kid always wanting to go to the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade.
Yeah.
And then finally you go there, and after you've been raised down here in the South, you know, you go to parades that they throw things at you.
Especially in New Orleans.
Oh, right,
Throw me
yeah,
something,
yeah.
mister. Throw me something.
And you go to New York to this parade, and they go by and wave at you. And what a snooze fest. Yeah.
But we throw things at
Oh, yeah, we throw
You come to
things.
Mardi Gras in Shreveport, you go to Mardi Gras in Lafayette, you go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, we're going to throw things at
You
you.
know, I've lived in 9 states, and people always say, oh, we're so different in our state. And I go, no, in Louisiana, we really are different.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
go to a parade, we throw things at you.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we throw things at you. You call it dealing with life's zingers. But what you really are in both books, you're a storyteller, Artie. You're a real storyteller.
Well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. My mother's a docent at a museum, and she always used to, you know, take us to the kitchen table and say, "This is history. Let me tell you what's going on now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
tell someone about this.
Yeah.
In time, you'll know about this. I mean, the March on Washington. You know, the death of Kennedy. I mean, everything was an event that we were required to be able to really understand it
Right.
and articulate it to someone else. So,
Yeah.
you know, I became a storyteller.
All right, so let's intrigue folks. Let me throw out a name, Martha White.
Martha White.
Well, most of us don't know who Martha White is.
Well, you might think of Martha White, the cornbread lady.
Yeah, I might think of the flour and cornbread lady, but that's not the Martha White that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And yet, this Martha White, could we say, has influenced the history of all of us?
Yeah, that's why.
Would that be too big of a stretch?
No, I was intrigued when I heard the story about Martha White. Is this unknown woman down in Baton Rouge 2 years before what Rosa Parks did
So Martha White lives right here in the state of Louisiana.
in Louisiana? And
Okay.
she's a recluse. She doesn't want the notoriety. But she did what Rosa Parks did, and she did it 2 years before Rosa Parks
Wow.
did. Taking nothing away from what Rosa Parks did.
No, nothing away from Rosa Parks, but Rosa Parks knew about.
Rosa Parks knew about
Knew
that.
about Martha White.
I understand in talking at different interviews that Martin Luther King even mentioned that he was looking at what was going on in Baton Rouge
Right.
to replicate that possibly in other cities throughout the U.S.
And then Rosa Parks changed history. Now, you take it a little further because you stretch and you say there's someone who said when he was asked who was most influential
Well,
in your
That's right. You
in
know,
the way you look at life.
Well, you know, the thing about it, you never know who you're influencing.
Right.
You know, Mikhail Gorbachev was asked who influenced him, and he said Lech Walesa. Lech Walesa, you know, did Solidarity, and then Lech Walesa was asked, well, who inspired him? And he said Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King said, well, who inspired him to do what he did? And he said Rosa Parks. And you think about this, it's mind-blowing.
And who influenced Rosa Parks? Martha White.
Isn't that amazing that an unknown woman, and then you and I have the power to do that. We could be unknowns.
So most people credit Mikhail Gorbachev with really the turn and what led to the joining of Berlin, the fall of the Berlin
War.
Wall, the end of the Cold
Cold
War,
War.
which had gone on for decades between the United States and the USSR. And eventually, you know, could we even say that Martha White, right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was so influential that she may have taken down at least a few bricks out of the Berlin Wall?
Well, the idea came to me, and I said, well, look, she's got to get the credit. The world needs to know who Martha White is.
Yeah.
I mean, this woman was a hero, but I hope she doesn't die with people not knowing who she was.
Well, maybe she, you know, like you say, she's a recluse, and maybe she doesn't want.
Oh, she
to know.
refuses interviews. She refused our interviews, and a reporter from, I think, from Europe tried to contact her, and recently told me that they called the police and said, no, she's not going to be harassed or interviewed or anything.
Right.
So here's just a hero, a wonderful hero that just wants to.
What makes you such a fascinating and good storyteller? What makes for a good storyteller? Are you a good listener, Artie? Is that one of your secrets?
You know, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I talk a lot.
Yeah, you
but,
do.
But when I'm
One of the
around,
things I like about you.
but when I'm around somebody who's smarter than me or is imparting something incredible to me, I shut up and listen. And everyone, I think, has a story to tell. And the magical thing, I'll ask people, well, what do you think? Well, tell me about something. You know, I do this all the time. I say, you seem like an interesting person. Tell me your story. I've never had anyone say, shut up, I'm not going to tell you anything. Most people will tell you things about themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes they become extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Yeah, and
And those
like,
are some of
like
the
I
stories
said,
there.
Body, you as a life strategist, this is one of the things I love. One of the things I love about these 2 books, they cover it all: body, mind, spirit, and relationships. And you're right. I mean, there is a relationship secret, isn't it? People want to tell their stories, and I bet everybody thinks you're a great conversationalist simply because you ask, tell me your story.
Well, I've had a lot of people tell me this. I said, oh, you're such a good listener. Because I've not said anything. I just sit there in awe of what they're telling me.
Yeah.
And especially in the dying process. You know, the priest will come out, the preacher will come out, give them last rites, whatever. But then they leave. And then
Yeah.
you've got all this amount of time that they're just sitting there pretty much waiting to die. So they really get a kick out, I say they do. They seem to get an enjoyment out of telling their life story to someone who would listen. And I tell you, I'm amazed at some of the great stories.
Yeah.
I could write tons of books about people's stories that I have.
You and I have even fantasized doing some type of media about inviting people to tell their stories, because there's so many of them out there.
I know.
They never end. And some of the stories, I want you to tell 1 or 2 stories when we come back from both books. So maybe think about a couple of good ones. But it's all about the story, really.
It's all about the story.
It's all about the story. We're talking with Artie Cesario today. His first book is It's All Good and God is at the End. His brand new book, We Throw Things at You. And you'll find both of those books available to you from outskirtspress.com. You can also go to amazon.com or barnesandnoble.com. But go, because you're going to want to continue the conversation we're starting today with Artie Cesario, our life strategist here on Strategies for Living. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Going up. Action. Take 4.
Early start on our Plumfield weekend.
In the kitchen, that's not what she said. Let's watch. was awesome, dude.
Shot 40, take 1,297.
What?
Guys, help me!
Good, good.
Welcome back into the television version of Strategies for Living. Obviously, you are watching Strategies for Living, but don't forget you can listen to Strategies for Living. Where? News Radio 710 Keel and FM 1017 on your FM dial. And we've been at News Radio 710 Keel already. We're in our 25th year. Can you believe that?
Congratulations.
And so you can listen every Sunday morning, 9:05 to 10. You can also go to www.strategiesforliving.com and listen to as many podcasts as you want there. You can also find us on Thursdays, healthylife.net out of Los Angeles. Today, our life strategist, Artie Cesario, his great first book, It's All Good and God is at the End, Preparing for a Happy Landing, and his brand new book, We Throw Things at You, Dealing with Life's Zingers. So, and you can buy the books, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, OutskirtsPress.com. Tell us a story, Artie.
Where would you like to begin? I tell
At
you,
the beginning.
I tell you, a story that, this one woman called me from North Carolina and she goes, there's one story in your book that's so repugnant, I can't believe that you put it in there. She said, I've read it now 8 times, and each time I read it, it's more repugnant. But it's a story about a guy, well, it's actually
So it's a deal, hate me or love me, just talk about me, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I love that about writing a book is that people will call and criticize you. You
Yeah.
have to be kind of thick-skinned if you want to write a book.
Yeah, you better be.
They'll tell you
Yeah.
what you like or what they didn't like. But it's just, it was a story that I felt that should be told. As a matter of fact, it's actually 2 stories kind of combined in one. But this young man wanted to go to LSU, but he couldn't afford to go to LSU. So he found a way to go to LSU by selling pot. Well, back in my era, selling pot was like selling heroin.
Sure. You could get in big trouble.
And he got in big trouble. Now, the thing about it, he was selling pot back in those days to your doctors today,
Yeah.
people that are judges, politicians, and everything.
Yeah. Oh, he had a big time client.
He had a big-time clientele, and like I said, I've had many of these people say, Artie, you're not going to mention my name in there. and I see him, and I go, no, this is... But unfortunately, the pot laws, they threw this guy in prison, 3 years of hard labor. He was sodomized in prison, and he ended up dying because of that. Now, I'm not advocating pot or anything like that.
Right.
But when you look back, because I know in my lifetime, it was illegal for black people to do certain things, go in restaurants, and that was illegal.
Right.
And it's just amazing, in my span of my 65 years,
You've seen, yeah.
That I've
Your
seen-
65
now-
years, my 60 years, we've seen a lot of changes.
pot's being legalized, and I'm like, not that I'm advocating anything, but it's just amazing. This judge, threw the book at this guy. We throw things at you. They
Yeah.
threw the book at him.
Yeah.
And he never gave up any of the names of any of the people. And like I said, when I see the names of some of these people now in elected offices, or I see them as in the hospitals and everything,
But he was trying to achieve his dream of going to LSU.
Yeah,
He
and
just-
like I
he
said,
just-
he wasn't. I'm not advocating it, any
Right.
condoning it. It was illegal, but there was a consequence for what he did, and they threw the book at him.
Right. He paid a big consequence. Yeah.
Yeah. And he had a public defender that he thought that he was just going to get slapped, his hand slapped, but that wasn't the case at all. He got this guy back in those days, he said the guy had an orange leisure suit and the full Cleveland, with the jewels and the white belt and everything. And they pleaded out 3 years. But he could have got 9 years of hard labor. Today, he would have probably got probation.
Right. Right. That's just an example of how things change.
Yeah. And then, like I said, there's some stories in there, and it's 2 true stories. It's called A Priest and a Rabbi Go in a Bar. You never heard that joke before.
You start laughing when you just look at the title, don't you?
Well, I was laughing because on Mardi Gras Day I was drinking with a priest in a bar in New Orleans, and I was telling him about the story. And you just can't make this stuff. I think some stories just kind of tell themselves.
Right.
But there was
You
this,
can't make it up.
right. There was a guy. It was a famous bar, which I am not allowed to tell the name of the bar. This was a famous bar in South Louisiana, and they started getting this horrible smell in the bar. Terrible smell. And the day I went in there, I said, "My God, what is that smell?" And he said, "Man, we've had all kind of people come in here and try to find out what that smell is." And I said, "Well, maybe you've got a spirit in here," because I'd worked with a guy who did an exorcism.
Right.
And smell was pretty bad.
Right.
And this guy goes, "Are you nuts?" And I was with a doctor friend of mine. That was the only credibility. He goes, "I can't believe." But I said, "Well, look, if by chance the smell doesn't go away, if something else weird happens, call me." Well, about 3 or 4 days later, he called me and he said, "I've been having spontaneous fires in my restaurant."
Wow.
Just fires for no reason.
Yeah, one of them started just in the middle of a table with nothing sitting on the
Right,
table.
and
Just
nothing,
boom.
nothing
Yeah.
was burning.
Yeah.
And finally, after the fire department came out, they said, "Well, we're not going to come out again until you talk to the chaplain." And this guy called me and said, "I'm not a religious guy. What the hell am I talking to the chaplain about?" and I said, "Well, maybe you just need to be a better guy." Because he said, I love humanity. It's just people I can't stand." And this was the owner of a restaurant. But he said, "I'm tired of freeloaders coming here wanting booze and free food and everything." And I just shoo him off. I said, "Well, maybe you shoot off an angel or
Yeah.
something like that." He goes, "That's crazy." He said, "But I saw the fires. I believe just about anything." He said, "How can I get around this?" I said, "Well, if someone comes up, maybe you just need to be kind to him." And he said that was kind of different for this guy's personality.
Yeah.
But he had a couple sailors come by, and they said, we can't get back on the ship. We're starving. We don't want food. I mean, we don't want money. We don't want liquor. But can you feed us?" And he fed them. And he said this one guy had a really weird look the whole time he was eating. And he asked him, he said, "What's this all about?" And he said, "Well, just your time is real short." But he said, you passed the test." And this guy asked me, he said, "What the hell does that mean?" I said, "I'm an insurance agent. What
do I
know?" But you can't make this stuff up. Mardi Gras night, the next night, the guy died, the proprietor of the restaurant. So maybe he did pass the test. Maybe he did see that.
And the
maybe,
sailor told him, "Your time is short." Wow.
Maybe, we are a brother's keeper, and that loving one another is really a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he earned it toward the end there.
Wow, Artie. I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, what's odd, that's not the only story. There's another one in there, a very similar story, and it happened up here in North Louisiana. And again, due to advice of counsel, I'm not.
You're not allowed to reveal names.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
So voodoo or hoodoo happens not only in South Louisiana,
But in North Louisiana,
but in North
too.
Louisiana too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Okay, so you're going to make us get the book to get the voodoo hoodoo story.
Well, you can't make this stuff. I mean, a lot of people, I go to these writers' conference, which I quit going to, because writers' conferences, people are fixing to write, they're fixing to do something.
Yeah.
And I'm an old guy.
Now
Just
you
do
got
it.
2 books under
Just
your
do
belt.
it.
Hey,
Just do it.
just get this done.
Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
Are you continuing to write? Well, I know that the first book was a surprise for you. Second book, you set out to do. And both of your books are excellent. Are you going to continue to write?
Well, I've got one book that I'm going to be putting out. It's strictly like a business type thing. It's called Insurance Covers Everything Except What Happens, but you buy it for the peace of mind. Just a little how-to to buy insurance. And then I'm writing another book right now. It's just a story. A priest told me this story, that he was a priest and that he decided to quit the priesthood. And he got married, and his wife was cheating on him. And he thought about getting a divorce and going back in the priesthood. I said, that's kind of a story right there. I think he would like to hear that. But then he committed suicide.
Oh,
So I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. But I think that's a story.
but that's
that
a
should be-
story. Yeah.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
interesting story, I thought.
Yeah. Wow. What advice does Artie Cesario give? Again, nobody, you said it earlier, we don't like to look at the inevitable. But what advice do you give to people?
Well, this is what I tell everybody. My advice is don't listen to advice.
Don't-
But
I love it.
listen to your heart and that little voice inside your head. If it says good things, do it.
Yeah.
Don't wait, because there's no guarantee of a tomorrow.
I love it. Artie Cesario, continue the conversation, folks, with him. Either one of his books or both. It's All Good and God is at the End, Preparing for a Happy Landing, and the brand new book, We Throw Things at You, Dealing with Life's Zingers. OutskirtsPress.com, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and if you want to invite Artie, he'll come to your favorite bookstore and sign books for you.
Oh, your rubber chicken speaking for lunch. I'm a rubber chicken speaker.
There you go. You can find him on Facebook, by the way, at We Throw Things at You. Artie, thank you for coming and being a
Well,
great
thank you for
life
inviting me
strategist.
back. I
And
enjoy it.
we'll have you back again and again. You tell great stories. Folks, hope you come back again and again. Don't forget News Radio 710 Keel and 101.7 FM, Sunday mornings 9:05 to 10 for Strategies for Living, the radio version. Until next time, for Artie Cesario, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. See you right here on Strategies for Living.